Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday, January 9th, 2024 Tumwater City Council work session. And I believe we all have, all of the council members are here, so we will dispense with roll call. So with that, we're going to start right in with Erica Smith Erickson and Brad Mudrood will be doing presentation on ordinance number 2023-002 final docket for the 2023 comprehensive plan amendments. So I will go ahead and turn it over to them.
Mayor, could I make a comment?
Yes.
I would like to welcome our new council member who this is her first work session with us. And if she doesn't work, I don't know what's going to happen because this is work time, Kelly. Welcome to the work session of the City Council. Congratulations on your election to our august body. It's nice to see.
Thank you. It's good to see all of you too.
Great.
And I'll work.
Okay. All right.
All right. Go ahead, Erica.
Thank you. All right, good evening. I'm Erica Smith Erickson. Some of you may not recognize me. This is my first time presenting to council. I'm the City of Tumwater's Housing and Land Use Planner, and I joined the city almost a year ago. Tonight, I would like to conduct a work session on two ordinances. First, starting with Ordinance 2023-02, the annual City of Tumwater Comprehensive Plan Amendments final docket. There are two city-sponsored comprehensive plan amendments on the docket: adoption of the 2024-2029 six-year capital facilities plan update, and the adoption of the Old Highway 99 corridor plan. The first amendment is the Old Highway 99 plan. The Old Highway 99 plan is the Old Highway 99 is a major transportation corridor. It connects the city of Tumwater with communities to the south. Commercial and residential use levels have crept upwards in recent years, extending peak commute hours and lengthening vehicle wait times. You might think of the Old Highway 99 plan as the next step in the Capitol Boulevard planning process. Around 2011 to 2013, the city worked with consultants and members of the community to develop a plan for the Capitol Boulevard corridor, focusing on the areas between Israel and M Streets. In 2019, the city received nearly $400,000 to perform a similar study looking at the Old Highway 99 from 73rd Avenue to 93rd. The Old Highway 99 corridor plan addresses development and improvement of Old Highway 99 from 73rd to 93rd Avenue. And for reference, 73rd Avenue starts just south of the business park across the street from the airport that contains Maconi's, the gym, Pig Stop Barbecue, and Forelli's Pizza. The Old Highway 99 corridor study determined that Old Highway 99 from 73rd to 88th Avenue should be widened to 5 lanes, 2 of which are motor vehicle lanes in each direction and a bike lane. And then there's also a suggested 2-lane roundabout at Henderson Boulevard and 88th Avenue. And then from Old Highway 99 to 93rd Ave, there would be an installation of a single lane roundabout. Project stakeholders recommended the replacement of existing signals with roundabouts. There are no bike lanes along the stretch of the corridor, and sidewalks only exist in a few locations. Replacing existing signals with roundabouts adds capacity along the Old Highway 99, improving operations and travel times, reducing high severity crashes, and significantly reducing intersection queues. The city asked for feedback on the corridor in the fall of 2020. The 5 main improvements people wanted to see along the corridor included bicycle lanes, sidewalks, reduced traffic congestion, intersection safety, and street lighting. The plan determined that work would be done in 5 phases. City Council placed the proposed comprehensive plan amendment on the 2023 Long Range Planning Work Program back in January of 2023. Planning Commission recommended further review of the proposal in January of 2023. And then on February 8th, 2023, the General Government Committee reviewed the preliminary docket and forwarded it to the City Council for review. And City Council held a work session February 21st of 2023 to consider recommendations from the Planning Commission and the GGC, and it included the proposal in the 2023 Annual Comprehensive Plan Amendment.
Question, are we supposed to be looking at slides right now?
No, not for this
Okay.
amendment.
Okay, and Angela, can you raise your hand so I can recognize you?
Yeah, very briefly, we made a decision because there were only 2 items on the amendment cycle, and neither one of them really lent themselves to slides. We thought it'd be more appropriate just to whirl through them as Erica's doing right now.
Yeah, so before I move on to the next amendment, did anyone have questions about the old Highway 99 corridor plan?
I don't see any, Councilmember Kathy?
Yes, all I wanted to ask was, do putting in all of these roundabouts add to the cost of construction?
That's actually a very good question, and I don't have the answer for that, but I can certainly have an answer for you before the next meeting.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate it. I've wondered that before and I don't remember asking it, so. Thank you.
Councilmember Doha?
Thank you, Mayor. It's not about, I appreciate Angela's question about the slides, and I appreciate Erica and Brad saying slides didn't make sense. But for those of us who take notes, like the highlight or a bullet or some slide that you could at least capture my attention with at the end of a long day, I kind of get lost in the numbers that you were doing. So just something to, I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but I am easily distracted after a long day. So just something to guide me and the highlights. So when I'm taking notes and I'm going back to the day is like, what are the highlights for me? So if you could maybe just next time, make a note, Leetta gets easily distracted. That would be super appreciated. Thank you.
Not a problem. Next time I will make sure to have at least some visuals for you guys.
And I might mention, Joan, to your question about roundabouts. I know on the 79th, that intersection is horrible. So that was something that we were working on to get in there, so. And I believe that's on that list, right, Erica? 79th,
Yes.
99, yeah. Councilmember Gabi.
Thank you, Erica, for so I am thinking middle of last year, maybe later part of last year, at one of my committee assignments, the Thurston County Transportation Board, we were talking about the Highway 99 and going towards Capitol Boulevard. Is that part of the urban planning corridor that is in Tumwater, one of the projects that's in Tumwater, beside the roundabout that is currently being worked upon?
Are you referring to the Trosper interchange or farther south on Capitol?
Yes, yes.
No, this that area is covered by our Capitol Boulevard plan. The area that we're talking about is south of Tumwater Boulevard. And basically it's everything alongside the airport all the way down to 93rd.
I do have a quick visual.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about that particular area. We were talking about it into segment, and that area came up. And I don't remember if that was part of the urban planning corridor that that EDC TTRPC was talking about. Do you know, Brad?
I apologize. No, I don't know if that is or not. I could definitely follow up on that though.
Because even Pete Kmet also chimed in. I said something about that area. Since it's been a while now, my brain is kind of fuzzy. Thank you.
So hopefully I am sharing screen now. This is from my presentation notes. I just went ahead and copied and pasted it for you guys. This shows the section starting at 73rd Avenue going down to 93rd Avenue with the proposed roundabout areas. And then also it goes in phases. So this kind of should help. And then also there are project costs associated with each phase. I took this from Transportation and Engineering Department's presentations they shared with me.
Councilmember Kathy, did you have another question?
I did. Brad said that he was going to look at the cost of roundabouts. Is there not some, I don't know what you call it, cost sharing or something to do with the development of the operation and maintenance building that has to do with the roundabout at, what is that, 79th?
Yeah, are you thinking that that project will contribute in part to the construction of the roundabout, or is it needs the roundabout in order to proceed?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe so, but again, I'm got my email open to Mary Heather to ask these particular questions. So
Okay.
I will in turn ask that question.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate it. You don't have to do it now.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Hopefully that helps you guys visualize. This is the airport right here in this area, and this is Old Highway 99 going down.
And I just might say that I believe what those costs include sidewalks, bike paths, that kind of thing also in the whole project. Would be my guess. Not just the roundabouts, but the whole thing.
Yeah, thank you. All right, for our second amendment, we have the 2024 through 2029 six-year capital facilities plan. The purpose of the capital facilities plan update is to address Growth Management Act requirements to update the city's six-year capital facilities plan with new data and analysis and confirm implementation actions every 2 years. The update reflects changes that have occurred in the city since the capital facility plan's last update as part of the 2021 comprehensive plan amendment. The capital facilities plan is an element of the comprehensive plan. The capital facility plan contains a list of capital projects with estimated cost and proposed methods of financing. The plan is meant to coordinate and provide consistency among many plans for capital improvements, including the transportation and parks elements of the comprehensive plan, various master plans, and other studies. It should ensure the timely provision of adequate facilities as required in the Growth Management Act. The Tumwater Capital's Facilities Plan is a document that provides a list of proposed major capital expenditures throughout the city. It also provides a multi-year look at strategies and financing requirements for major capital programs. The plan projects needs 6 years into the future for major construction, infrastructure improvements, land acquisitions, and machinery and equipment purchases. The plan then provides a funding strategy and projected funding scenarios for each succeeding year. The threshold minimum for inclusion into the capital facilities plan is $25,000. The Growth Management Act defines public facilities to include streets, roads, highways, sidewalks, streets, and road lighting systems, traffic signals, water systems, storm and sanitary systems, parks, open space and recreation facilities, and schools. It further defines public services to include fire protection and suppression, law enforcement, public health, education, recreation, environmental protection, and other governmental services. City Council held a work session on February 21st, 2023 to consider the recommendations from the Planning Commission and General Government Committee and included the proposal in the 2023 Annual Comprehensive Plan Amendment docket, preliminary docket to be reviewed by the Community Development Department and staff and to be later presented in 2023. The Public Works Committee discussed the update to the financial plans for general government and transportation on July 6th of 2023, and the financial plans for the sanitary sewer, the storm drain, and water funds on July 20th, 2023. Planning Commission met for a briefing on the update to the 6-year capital facilities plan on July 11th, 2023 to address the financial plans for the general government and transportation funds, and a briefing on August 8th to address financial plans for the sanitary sewer, storm drain, and water funds. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on December 12th, 2023 and recommended approval of ordinance number O-2023-02. Staff recommends ordinance O-2023-02 be placed on the City Council consideration calendar for approval on February 6th, 2024.
Any questions? All right. So I think we can move on. If there's no other questions, I think we can move on to the next one, which is ordinance O-2023-012. The final docket for 2023 annual housekeeping amendments. And I believe, Erica, if you're ready for that, that would be great.
Apologies, I was yelling at Erica during my break there.
Sorry, and Mayor Eileen had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Councilmember Swarthout.
Sorry, I was late putting it up. So I was just inquiring how big the capital, we're looking at the capital facilities plan because it's not, and let's see, and the amendments on there, I'm just surprised how big it was and that it included the different school districts and everything in there. I was trying to understand how all of this ended, why all this is in there. I was just curious.
Yeah, Eileen, for our purposes, we have obviously our city projects that fall under general government, water, sewer, and transportation and so forth. We're also responsible for making sure that we incorporate the schools separate CFPs, both the Olympia School District and the Tumwater School District and so forth. It's primarily there just for informational purposes because the school boards have already adopted those. But essentially under GMA, we need to make sure we include that in the same location and account for that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that I asked that this be put on the calendar for consent on February 6th, 2024.
Yeah, and I did not see any objections to that, so.
Thank you. All right. My second item for tonight is the 2023 Annual Development Code Housekeeping Amendments. I do have a presentation for you guys, so hang tight and I will share my screen. And can... All right, can everyone see my presentation? Perfect.
Yeah, we do with your notes though.
Oh, okay, let's do. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Brad is going to share the presentation for me.
we thought we would do this in the most complicated fashion possible, just to,
Sorry.
we're mostly concerned with making sure that Councilmember Dahlhoff is kept awake during the whole process.
I
So
literally just unmuted because I was gonna say, I appreciate that Erica looks like she's talking to herself and it makes it like, wait, she's talking to us? Like, I'm totally enthralled and engaged. Thank you, both of you.
okay, now can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brad. All right, so the second item on the agenda, I would like to conduct a work session on ordinance O 2023-012 and the 2023 Annual Development Code Housekeeping Amendments. So over the last 2 years, staff have gathered a list of minor development code amendments to be considered. Overall, there are 4 proposed amendments on the final docket. These are minor amendments or changes to our development code. Next slide. To amend the development code, staff followed a process outlined in Tumwater Municipal Code 1860-25A, text amendments and rezones. This process is similar to the annual comprehensive plan amendment process. On September 5th, 2023, the City Council approved all the items on the preliminary docket of proposed amendments to move forward as part of the final docket. Next slide, please. On October 24th, 2023, the Planning Commission held a briefing on the final docket, and on November 14th, a work session. Public notice for the Planning Commission hearing was issued on Friday, December 1st, 2023. And on December 12th, 2023, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on ordinance O 2023-012 and recommended approval, which brings us here tonight for a work session. Next slide, please. Included in tonight's meeting packet is the staff report, which includes more in-depth details on the review process and timeline, summaries of the amendments, and the code sections to be amended, and the proposed amendment language. Next slide, please. The 4 proposed development code amendments are A, clarifying undergrounding utility requirements, B, clarifying first floor uses in the town center mixed use subdistrict, C, clarifying open space requirements for manufactured home parks, and D, adding a process for building height increases for specific industrial uses. Next slide, please. All right, the first amendment is to Tumwater Municipal Code 17-12-200, General Design Standards, Underground Utilities. We are clarifying the requirement that new and existing electrical, power, telephone, cable television, fiber optics, and other transmission lines shall be installed underground. We also added a deviation process for when they can't meet those standards. Next slide, please. On October 9th, 2023, additions and revisions to chapters 3 and 4 of the development guide became effective immediately. This included requirements for undergrounding utilities. The Transportation and Engineering Department asked that Tumwater Municipal Code 17-12-200 reflect the development guide and further clarify underground installation and relocation of utility requirements. The proposed amendments provide a purpose, applicability, and a deviation from requirement subsections. The previous provisions are stricken out. So as you can see, we definitely added some language and requirements, whereas before it was pretty vague.
Councilmember Daha.
Thank you, Mayor. Erica and Brad, so can I give a scenario with this? So say you have new development going in, right? And then, but it's next to a development where you also want to put the utilities underground, right? Because obviously they're connected. How does this updating show who's responsible for what? Because what if the already established development is, say, affordable housing or low income? Would they still have the same fees, or how is that addressed? Or am I completely in the wrong section?
Yeah, no, this would come into play if certain things are, first of all, if it's a brand new development. Number 2, if a threshold is met for redevelopment of the property. If there's an existing use there that is not changing, that's next to something that's changing, that existing use doesn't have to do anything. We've included in here a little more thresholds in terms of applicability and when to be putting overhead utilities underground to account for smaller projects, because in the past, basically everybody has to do everything. That's not necessarily obviously cost effective and goes against what we're trying to do for affordable housing and other things. So that's the number one reason we included that. If for larger developments, say the new Habitat project that's going in, we're trying to do other things to offset the cost of that project, and I think that's the strategy we're trying to do. We still really want the stuff to go underground, especially on days like this when we're losing power lines for storms and other things. It's just sort of a good practice citywide to ensure that we have this done, but we want to make sure obviously that we have special needs projects dealt with in a different way.
Perfect. Thank you.
You can, you can continue, Erica.
Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, our second code amendment is to Tumwater Municipal Code 182350, Town Center Zone District Development and Design Standards specific to properties fronting main streets. The intent of the Town Center Mixed Use Subdistrict is to create a pedestrian environment with first floor land uses that generate pedestrian activity. Within this amendment, we are clarifying uses that are allowed on the first floor of commercial and residential developments along main streets in the Town Center Mixed Use Subdistrict. Next slide. Previously permitted uses were vague and unclear. The proposed amendments are intended to provide more clarification on required uses, such as professional services, medical clinics, child daycare centers on the first floor commercial and residential development. The uses are intended to create pedestrian activity and environment. So what we added is underlined. So we added professional services, medical clinics, child daycare centers, child mini daycare centers. It helps with citizens, developers, and staff because there's a 20% minimum requirement that the first floor, the gross floor area on the first floor shall be dedicated to one of these services or uses.
Councilmember Danby, do you have a question?
Oh, you're calling on me?
Yes, did you have a question?
I'm sorry. Yes, I did have a question. Since we talked about this, I talked with someone in a city north of here that said they had some kind of a ordinance or something that said medical clinics, and they were not specific enough, and they've had a big problem with drug clinics or people coming where they can. Anyway, it had to do with the use of drugs, and I don't know if it was recovery center or if it was where you can come and safely get drugs.
Okay.
So anyway, I just wondered about that in our language here.
Yeah, we do define medical clinic in our zoning code, and I don't believe it allows for those particular uses. Those are typically things that are handled under our essential public facility and things that we have to allow for somewhere in the city, but we don't necessarily want necessarily. So I think we're okay there.
Okay, good.
I just want to also make a quick clarification. Personal services are things like a barber or salon or a tailor or something, and professional services are things like a real estate office, architect's office, those kinds of things. Not a doctor's office, but lawyer, attorney's office.
Okay, thanks.
You can continue.
Yeah, so I was looking at our code, and medical clinic means a place where medical or dental care is provided to persons on an outpatient basis by professionals in the healthcare field. All right. Our next code amendment is to 1842-130 General Land Use Regulations. This is clarifying manufactured home parks, open space requirements, open space area standards for development without divisions of land. As the code is currently written, manufactured home parks that are not subject to the land division process would not be required to provide open space. And this is how the code is currently written. It doesn't include manufactured home parks that aren't subject to being divided. It just states multifamily dwellings or rooming houses or 5 or more dwelling units as row houses are townhomes. So on our next slide, our proposed amendment language. We included in subsection E or in A, manufactured home parks with 5 or more dwelling units, and then in E, manufactured home park developments, and then in subsection F, manufactured home parks with 5 or more dwelling units, and the land is not being divided, at least 50% of the area set aside shall be open space for active recreation. So we're really clarifying that mobile home parks that are existing or new with 5 or more dwelling units that aren't subject to subdivision standards or subdividing still are required to provide open space. So it's kind of a lot to read, so I'll leave it on the screen there for a second.
Councilmember Doha.
Thank you, Eric. Could you clarify again? This is for new? Just new manufactured home parks.
This is, yeah, this is anytime there is a new development or a substantial redevelopment of an existing use that would cross the threshold for that. When we originally did the open space amendments a few years back, this was an omission by staff. We didn't pick this up. We didn't realize that manufactured home parks that didn't do a subdivision weren't subject to this. And we wanted to make sure that they had the same kind of requirements as multifamily and everything else, that they provide some level of open space for their residents. But this would only apply if there's a substantial redevelopment of the property or a brand new manufactured home park.
I was gonna say, what's the likelihood that we're gonna get a new manufactured home parks when most of them are being sold?
That you've hit a really good point. Currently, the economics are we probably will not see that, just because it's not currently something that would, I'm not seeing new developments come in, redevelopments
Right.
potentially.
But really, if there's redevelopment, like if one is like adjusting and doing some things, then we're gonna require them. Would that impact them? Would rents go up because now a space that could be a home is now open space so that they're not making that income? So would they put that? Like, does that make sense what I'm asking? Like,
Yeah. I think it's really the threshold of at what point, if you're adding new units, would this requirement tick in? I think it has to be a fairly substantial change to the park of 25% or maybe 50% before this kind of thing would kick in. So I really looking at our existing parks and how, with the exception of 1 or 2, almost all of them I think are pretty built out. There's not a lot of space to add a double wide again. And I know single wides potentially. So I'm really not seeing that this is going to be triggered for redevelopment. This is really sort of to capture the time if we get a new such development in.
all right, so it's really like the gist is like there's not a big concern, but this is also down the road planning so that you're covering your bases and all those areas are it's applicable now too.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Swarthout.
Thank you. And then I was looking, I've got it pulled up the amendment language, and it does, like in E, it does say like the community development director in consultation with the Parks and Recreation director may accept a fee in lieu of park and open space areas subject to the following. And so I'm wondering if that, if we do have a circumstance with the manufactured parks, if that would be something that would apply to address that open space issue as well.
Yeah, I think potentially there is a size requirement attached to that, but I think there is flexibility in the code to address those kinds of issues. And then, of course, there's also the variance procedure that could be followed to address it as well.
All right. Go ahead, Erica.
Thank you. And our last amendment is for building height increases over 65 feet for specific industrial uses. With this amendment, we established a conditional use permit process for specific industrial uses wanting to exceed the 65 feet height limit in the light industrial and heavy industrial zone districts. Next slide. One second. We can go ahead to the next one. So our code, oh, sorry, Brad, can you go back one, please? What about slide 15?
Mhm. Back to
Thank you.
there.
Okay, so this is an amendment with 3 code sections that are being amended. We are amending Tumwater Municipal Code 182440 for the light industrial zone district conditional uses, Tumwater Municipal Code 182540 heavy industrial zone district conditional uses, and we are amending conditional use permits B uses. Okay. Now,
Councilmember Kathy, did you have a question?
I just would like a definition of the difference between light industrial and heavy. If you could just give an example of what's light, what's heavy, where that'd be helpful.
So in the city, almost all of our industrial zones are light industrial, and that includes everything from simple warehousing to manufacturing that's entirely within the building that has no external effects. The heavy industrial zone in the city is only the gravel mine on Black Lake Boulevard. And that's really intended for those uses that have other external impacts, noise or smells or things like that, that we clearly want away from other uses that may be, that they're really incompatible. So that's really the difference between those two things.
So we have a number of light industrial areas and uses that, and zoning that is somewhat in neighborhoods, am I correct? That butt up to neighborhoods and so forth, and now they
Yeah.
can be 65 feet up.
Yeah,
With-
there are specific requirements as part of that. What little bit of background to this whole process. When we first looked at the conditional use process back in 2017, we looked at there was actually at that time a conditional use process for allowing for additional height for all kinds of uses beyond just industrial uses if there was some good reason for it. We decided at that time that it would be appropriate to raise the maximum height limit in these zones to account for that and then get rid of the conditional use process. What we have discovered since then is there are particular uses that, say, for example, they have a tower or something as part of their manufacturing process that needs to exceed 65 feet. There is no, the variance process doesn't work for them for this because it's a hard thing to justify. But we wanted to make sure that we allowed for that in the sense of uses that weren't in inhabited space, but had, structures or whatever needed for manufacturing and so forth, that we had a process to allow for that and have public review and go through the hearing examiner approval process for that.
I guess I'm just questioning because I want to protect residential areas that abut these industrial zones or are close and are going to be impacted by possibly more or less by this height allowance.
And I think that's appropriate. And I think as Erica goes through the presentation, we talk a little bit about how we have mitigation for those kinds of things as part of the comprehensive, conditional use permitting process.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Swarthout?
Yes, just because I'm a very visual person, do we have any buildings in Tumwater now that are like at least 65? feet tall. I don't, what does, or I'm just trying to picture what that looks like. If we have anything like that, or as an example, like Department of Health building, that's not, how tall is
No.
that?
Yeah, I think that's probably 50, 55 at the most. I don't think we have any buildings of that
Okay.
height.
Okay. Because then it looks like too, that under the process that they could go up to 90 feet. So that would, like, you're talking about like the tower part, then if they had
Yeah.
to do a tower or something, okay.
Yeah, no, so the 90 feet would be the ultimate cap if they went through the CUP process.
Mhm.
Again, the original process in 2017 didn't have a cap at all. So you could get a conditional use permit and exceed, 90 feet and do whatever you could justify.
Yeah, and I understand what Councilman Kathy too, because I know like the apartments that are on Tumwater Hill now that, you don't, it's hard to imagine how tall, when you're approving these things, how tall things are really gonna be. And then when it gets built, then it's like, wow. So anyway, so I just trying to visualize how tall these could be and if they could be in an area near a neighborhood or something.
Councilmember Althauser?
Thanks. I have two questions. So if we're talking about 65 feet and light industrial, I mean, we obviously have a ton of light industrial down by the airport property, or excuse me, down by the airport. But I would think that would be so close that FAA would already not allow you to go up to 65 feet. So for this light industrial, are we really mostly talking about like the Mottman area?
It would be the Mottman area potentially. It would really have to be a place where you had a large enough area that we require have height and other things. Now, those areas that aren't subject to the FAA limitations on height that aren't within the runway zones in Newmarket would be able to go up to this height. So there's a portion, say, directly west of the airport that could potentially have these heights if they so choose. But those areas, say north or south of the airport runways or immediately adjacent to those areas, those are the areas that they wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay. And my other question, and feel free to let me know if we're going to get to this eventually, but for the conditional use process, I guess I just don't have a solid understanding of the amount of discretion that the hearing examiner has to look at the facts of a given situation and to assess things like impact on the neighbors. Like when we try to take those things into consideration, what's the best way to do that in terms of language in the code? Is that like a small sentence somewhere that says that the hearing examiner should give great weight to the impact this will have on neighbors? Or like how do we memorialize that within the code while still offering the discretion needed to allow this kind of thing when it's makes sense to do so, when it wouldn't be impacting the neighbors and would need to go up that high to accomplish a project's goals that would be beneficial for the city?
Yeah, and I think when we get to the discussion of the minimum conditions that are established in the CUP for that, I think covers that issue because there's language in there that really that building height shall not result in a substantial or undue adverse effects on adjacent or abutting properties. So that language is built into the conditions for the hearing examiner to take testimony and say, does this occur, doesn't? So this is, I think, it gives the hearing examiner the ability to say that, no, this doesn't work, but you could do it this way, provided, this mitigation is provided.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so if we want to go ahead real quick and go to the next slide. So really quick, adding to the light industrial district, we added a condition or a subsection saying that in order to the maximum building height may be increased, but they have to follow the process and procedures of TMC 1856, 110B, which is the conditional use section, which has the hearing examiner conditions that we're talking about right now. And so if we go to the next slide, this is for the heavy industrial district. It's the same language saying that we have to follow the process outlined in Tumwater Municipal Code 1856 110B. And then if we go to 1856, 110B, this is where we have the minimum conditions for the hearing examiner to review the conditional use permits with. So there was 9 conditions total. So one is height increases shall only be to accommodate equipment, structures, or buildings that contain special equipment primarily related to the manufacture, assembly, processing of goods or products. 2, functional need for a height increase shall be demonstrated by the applicant. 3, the proposed height increase shall be compatible with the general purpose, goals, objectives, and standards of the comprehensive plan, zoning regulations, and any other plan, program, map, or regulation of the city. Next slide. Building heights shall not result in substantial or undue adverse effects on adjacent and abutting property when a building in excess of the maximum height is proposed adjacent to or abutting a lot with maximum height less than the subject property. Increased setbacks and or step backs may be appropriate to reduce adverse effects on adjacent or abutting property. 5, upper floor step backs, varied tower heights with separation and or architectural methods shall be integrated into the design to provide a human scaled building edge along the street with access to sky views. Bulk reduction methods such as varied building geometry, variety in materials, textures, pattern or color, architectural rooftop elements, and or other techniques shall be provided. 6, buildings shall be designed so that light and glare impacts upon streets, public facilities, and public open spaces are minimized. 7, buildings shall be designed so that shade and shadow impacts on adjacent shadow-sensitive uses, for example, residential, outdoor restaurants, open spaces, and pedestrian areas are minimized. And 8, maximum building height allowed under this process shall be no more than 90 feet, and no structure shall penetrate imaginary airspace surfaces as defined part of the FAA regulations. So those are the 9 conditions for the hearing examiner and staff to review the conditional use permit with.
Councilman Roldhauser.
Thanks. In terms of what constitutes an adverse effect, subsection 4 here says that the building heights may not result in substantial adverse effects. And I'm kind of thinking of that in the context of cross-referencing subsection 7, which says that shade and shadow impacts are minimized. And when I read those two together, what that says to me is that shade and shadow does not constitute an adverse effect because it can coexist with subsection 4 so long as it's minimized. Is that an accurate interpretation?
Yeah, I think it is. I think what the shade and shadow comes into play, say for either properties on the east or the west. So we're looking at is where it is possible to minimize those effects, we will do so. We're not going to necessarily be able to get rid of those effects completely, just because if you have a greater height than an adjacent property, you're going to have some level of shadow effects. But as much as possible, try to reduce that through applications, how the design of the project is done and so forth.
Okay. I wonder the hypothetical situation I'm envisioning in my head that I want to make sure is accounted for would be a situation where you're next to a residential and there's a shadow effect created. And maybe in that residential, they had invested a fair amount of money in like solar cells for their rooftop. And now if they get all this shadow, that however much money they spent, I don't know, $15,000 or $20,000 on solar cells, now has become sort of a sunk cost that they're not getting any return on by way of generating electricity. I wonder, it sort of feels to me like that, even if that is minimized, that still is a pretty, like I would define that as an adverse effect. But if it's just shadow taken into account on number 7, like what I don't understand is whether these provisions are mutually exclusive. Like, can a shadow elevate to an adverse effect, or would that?
I think what you just described, you're interfering with an existing solar system or something of that nature. That would be an undue adverse effect. So that would rise to the next level beyond just shadow or shade. We wanted to include the shade and shadow things because we wanted to have some level of control of, I don't want to say unexplainable things, but a little bit more way to guide that to, to minimize those levels of effects. So before it gets to the clearly undue adverse effect level, if that makes sense.
Okay. And one language suggestion that I had at the tail end of 7 here is I would be interested in seeing if that could be changed to are minimized to the greatest extent feasible, as opposed to, like, you could minimize something by not a lot and still check that box. So having some sort of language or qualifier so that that is rigorously taken into account, I think would make me more comfortable with that provision.
Okay. Yeah, that is something we could definitely consider and bring forward at your next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Kathy?
Thank you. I really appreciate what Michael has, added to this and given us more things to think about here. I think it's important when this happens and there are these buildings close to residents, that residents understand that they have the option to ask for or bring these kinds of things up. Because one of the other issues with the shade and, a tall building next door were some people I talked to at one time that were concerned about their garden, and they gardened, they were somewhat on the, lower end of the scale economically, and they depended on it, and they were able to sell some of their things. So would be important for families that have solar or have, in this situation, these people had a garden. There could be other things we don't think of tonight. How would people be encouraged to know what our rules are here and read them? Would we let them know if they brought it up or
No. So there will be 2 parts to that. Number one, we would be notifying, we have a standard notification for every resident or every property within 300 feet of the development would be getting our notice of applications up front. And if they the applicant decides to do this and apply for conditional use permit, those people within that 300 feet, and it's expanded depending upon the size of property and so forth, would also be getting a separate notice regarding this public hearing on this particular issue. So they would be notified of, of the existence of this code and why it's being considered, and the fact that essentially the neighbors would not have to basically pay to participate. They would be getting notices to say, please come provide your information as part of this hearing process, and then the hearing examiner would take their testimony into account as part of his decision in that process. So I think that's where the conditional use process comes in as a positive. I think it captures those neighbors and the concerns that they may have as part of that process.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Michael, for your input to this. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah. And I apologize, I need to run over to the Planning Commission. So I'm going to turn this back over to Erica.
Great, thank you, Brad. Go ahead, Erica.
All right, so that was basically the last slide. So thank you, Brad. So next steps, staff would like to recommend ordinance 2023-012 be placed on the City Council consideration calendar for approval on February 6, 2024. I have written down your comments that I've received during this, but that is our ask for tonight.
I don't see any issue with doing that. I don't see anyone who makes I think everyone's good with that.
Perfect. All right, well, I appreciate you guys listening to me. It was nice to get to present to you all for the first time. It's been a while, but you're going to be seeing much more of me with the comprehensive plan update.
Great, thanks, Erica. All right, now we're going to move to the council meeting broadcast and cable channel strategy, and Ann Cook will be presenting.
Well, hello, how are you this evening? I'm going to let you know ahead of time that I have a loaner computer. So you might see my notes, you might see my presentation. But I'm going to try and keep it pretty short and focused and walk you through where we are now with transitioning from services from TC Media to our own in-house production. Let's start with, one moment. Knew this was going to be exciting. No. Okay. And are you able to see my PowerPoint?
Nope.
Not yet? How about now?
There we go. It's coming now.
Okay. I'm pretty sure you can peek ahead because I am pretty sure if I put this in another view, you are going to get to see the presenter view. So I apologize for that. Okay. So first up, little manual computer. So I have a lot of good news for you tonight, and I'm pretty happy with the progress we've made, both working with the other jurisdictions. We're all on the same path. And so one of the first things, we talked a lot about PEG TV, Public Education and Government. And I think we've come up with a wonderful solution. You heard from some constituents that like to work with TC Media on public access. So got some good news there. All the jurisdictions will be providing education and government access services. So for us, that's our city council work sessions and council meetings. And this is my first priority, as we want to get these live in-house production before we move on to any other programming. But the really good news is we found a way to continue to partner with TC Media, not just through the transition, which they're supporting us. They're here this evening. They'll continue to provide services for us at least through the end of January. And then at that point, we've all agreed that they can continue to use the public access channel, channel 22. They will continue to operate their public access facility, offer classes and training, and this will be at no cost to the city of Tumwater or the other jurisdictions. They'll be self-supporting, and I think that's really good news, a nice compromise. We also had an opportunity to reassign some channels. Tumwater TV will continue as channel 26. And the county and Olympia will be sharing a channel, and the city of Lacey now has its own channel, which is important because we've all moved our meetings to Tuesday night. And that was a little bit of a challenge, trying to broadcast 3 jurisdictions on 2 channels. So there's some good news there. When we think about transparency in government and access, our new platform is going to do one really important thing that we haven't been able to do. It includes captioning, and that wasn't possible previously. And the law provides an exception for PEG providers, and that's really not where we want to be. So I'm excited that we're going to be able to offer people captioning. We also will now be able to live stream. The meetings will be available on multiple platforms, and we'll have video on demand. That's similar to the services we have now. But here's what it's going to look like. Here's where people will be able to see us. We'll be across all platforms. So we We appeal to a number of demographics. So over-the-top services, it's kind of an industry term. It's any kind of service that's not cable TV. So we've opted for Fire Stick and Roku. There's a lot of great data out there that, 88% of adults watch free on-demand streams through Fire Stick and Roku or other platforms. And 82% of adults have a subscription-based stream. And that could be something like Hulu, Disney Channel, a variety of other services. We selected Fire Stick and Roku because it's over 50% of the market share. If we were live in a room, I'd probably ask you all to raise your hand and tell me if you have a Fire Stick or a Roku, but I can only see about three of you right now. Most new televisions, smart TVs are called, they come with these apps already built in. So it's another convenience factor for people to access this. They don't necessarily need to go and buy an app or another device. And then this platform lends itself well to mobile devices. I'm going to save one little option for you for the future consideration this year, because I think we're going to be talking about this most of the year, how it's working, what our next steps are. So here's, in fact, next steps. This is what I'm working on this month. The cable installation has been completed in council chambers into our server room. We have a new server and a variety of hardware that's arriving and that will be installed. Then, of course, gets connected to cloud services. None of this would be possible without something in the cloud. We're narrowing in on a staffing solution for this in-house production, and then we'll have training. I think we're on schedule similarly to the county, and barring any glitches, we hope to be live with our in-house production at the beginning of February. And TC Media again has been gracious. They'll stick with us for as long as we need them to continue providing access on the cable channel. And I'm going to wrap with this and turn this off. As we go forward, once we're live with council meetings, we will need to look at channel content, what else we're running besides council meetings. And then there are some additional components that we can look at. One of them is a mobile app. I didn't want to bring it on live now. We have a lot of learning. And then there's also some options to integrate more seamlessly with our website. So everything from, the agenda software management system. So it's a bit of a one click for people.
Councilmember Jefferson, you had a question.
As soon as Ann is done with her briefing, Mayor.
Councilmember Jefferson, I think this is a great time for questions.
Okay. Excellent update, Ann. So I understand that TC Media is going to continue their service to us. Is it at no cost, at minimal cost to us? That's my first question.
Okay. So the services they're providing this month is minimal cost. It's within what's in our budget because we aren't supporting their public access. So we're really paying for the service that they're providing like tonight.
Okay. My second question is, having ran before, the candidate forums, how is that going to work? How are the cities going to support that so that voters can know about
Absolutely.
local candidates?
That is a fantastic question. So the candidate forums will continue and they will be on the TC Media Public Access channel. And one of the nice things about our in-house production is we have the option to schedule programming. And if we're working collaboratively with TC Media, which I anticipate will continue to do so, we could also run it on our channel if we chose to, or rerun it. So that will continue. And we did sit down and went through the list of other organizations and entities that had either had programming on one of TC Media's channels, or sometimes, you know, I have given airtime for like the Tumwater School District to have programming, or Lot has programming.
Mhm.
So as far as we know, we've checked our list. Everyone has a place, and will be, you know, continue to be able to provide their programming.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like a good plan. Thanks, Ann. Good work.
It's a great question. Thanks for asking.
Councilmember Althauser.
Thanks. This seems like a really happy medium, like a happy compromise. I guess my question is just like, so you mentioned a couple sources for programming just there, like the school district and Lot. I guess I was just, do we have enough programming to really fill out all that time? Like, I know a few really good jokes and we could like syndicate that, but like, I don't think people are going to be wanting to hear from me all the time with my stand-up routine. It's going to get stale. So what else are we, like, what else is out there? Is that like what the members of the community make, and then we decide to run it on the channel, or like, what's the other content?
That, again, a great question. So that is a future conversation I think that we will all have. But in the short term, there's a lot of free programming that's available to PEG service providers through an organization called WTOA and other sources. And in between programming right now on Tumwater TV, that's the kind of things that you'll see if it's not a council meeting. And TC Media is programming those for us now. So with our new in-house, you know, we'll be programming it and scheduling it. The nice thing is, you know, we can schedule it out, you know, for as long as we have programming. And we also own History Talks that we produced in partnership with the Olympia Tumwater Foundation, and some other programs that are ours. So I think with a little refresh, there's some of them have some copyright music that if we refresh the music and the openings, we've got an opportunity for that. And our future conversation really is around how do we program and what kind of content are we going to be able to provide on cable TV. If we are strictly providing streaming services, over the top services, we don't have to be live all the time. So.
Okay. Thank you.
I suggest, Anne, that you do not start with Michael's routine, because maybe people then wouldn't watch later or something. So
I will write that down.
yeah, but I think we could leave it open if he gets it down and it's really good.
Move to strike that from the record, please. Councilmember Kathy has impugned my comedic abilities.
I like them, but
I'm going to go to Councilmember Swarthout and then Councilmember Dolha.
So to continue with the frivolity, what about Dance or Dance? We could bring that back. You don't know.
I think I know what you're talking about. Or I may have been, that's probably best on channel 22.
Okay.
Councilmember Dolha.
Thank you, Mayor. So just adding to that, Michael's stand-up routine, Eileen's dance off. I was just thinking the Olympia Tumwater Foundation, like future conversations, like Don Trosper, his voice is like butter, right? And so I just saw John at like Ramirez a little while ago. And so I'm like, we've talked about what that relationship looks like moving forward. And so that would be amazing, right? It's a win-win. And then my personal one that I wanted years ago was PC Beats. planning commissioners on the streets, right? Like a version of Jay Leno and the planning commissioners in the golf carts going around asking community members what's working well and what could be better. And I feel we should circle back to that because back in the day, Mayor Pete Kmet said no. And I think if Michael can do his stand up, I think we need planning commissioners and golf carts checking in with our community. That's my request. Thank you so much.
I think you should.
I have
I
to
think-
say, I love the ideas for the type of programming we could have. I think
I
it was
think
a creative
golf-
streak. I'm sorry,
Like,
Councilmember Cassidy.
and she is like blank. She's not writing any of this down. She's like, okay, thank you. No.
Written it all down.
You know, you have given me an opportunity. First, I applaud your creative streak. It doesn't always, we don't always see it in our council meetings. In-house production, the person that's going to sit in the room behind the dais and switch camera angles to the speaker, put the lower third on and get the right person's name with their face. It's a bit more of an production and engineering skill set. And when you talk about programming and creating content, that video producer, writer, that's really a separate skill set. Occasionally you'll find a person that can do both. And so as we go forward and we think about content, producing the content is probably the most challenging. I have had some preliminary conversations, for instance, with John Friedman, and you know, they've got the talent, they've got the programs, having the staffing and the equipment to record, edit, you know, put underlayer music, titles. So in a few months, I hope to be invited back again, and we can really think about what the council priority is around this, and what kind of resources as we go into a new biennium.
Great. Any other questions?
Well, I thank you. I
Yeah,
thank you
that's-
again. This is, we are joining a number of cities that are moving in this direction. And
Councilmember Agabi, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to ask Anne if she's wanting us to do video blogging for the city.
to do video blogging,
Yes. And Michael could be.
my Post-it is brimming with ideas, so thank you.
I'm sure you didn't realize you're going to get so many ideas, right?
I'm shocked by the, no. I think it's, you know, I think it's fun, and video is an engaging medium. And, you know, it's a commitment to resources. I was waiting for somebody to tell me that they know magic or they can do impressions. I think you've got some time. So thank you again. I may be the last thing before you adjourn, but please keep thinking and we'll keep checking in. And I'm really looking forward to that first meeting. We'll probably invite one of our TC Media colleagues to just join us, and they won't have to be the ones running around trying to solve the technical problem. It'll be ours. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Mayor City Administrator report. And so I will start with Lisa.
I do not have anything in particular this evening, Mayor, unless there is a question from a council member, perhaps.
I don't think so. I do want to remind people, though, that we're expecting bad weather. It keeps changing of when it is. So again, just as a note, you will probably, if it actually does snow, you're going to see a lot of staff out there with snow plows, and this is for main arterials, not for residential neighborhood streets, we have to keep the emergency management open. So that's just so the community members know that this is, you know, we do not have the staff to be able to do every street, but we do need to keep the main thoroughfares open. So hopefully this snowstorm, it keeps changing, and they keep changing the timeline. So, you know, it's a possibility by the time we meet for our council meeting that we will have had something, and we will probably report back if there's been any issues.
Is this a good time to check on your neighbors? Or
Yes, very good time to check on your neighbors. It's always a good time to check on your neighbors, but
It's always
especially,
yeah.
yeah. So
And-
I apparently lost power for a portion of last night, and my I was kind of behind time all day long because my alarm clock when I woke up was doing the flashy thing, and so yeah, so we're gonna possibly see wind issues, possibly snow issues. So this is kind of one of our bigger winter storms, I think. So just want everybody to be prepared. All right. So I believe that is it. So I'm going to give you all back some of your day. So with that, we are adjourned, and we will see everybody next Tuesday. Thank you.